Hi there, my name's Anna Jessup, and I'm here with mayoral candidate Kiri Vadivelu, who is our socialist candidate. Kiri, tell us why you're running.
Oh, hi, Anna. It's a pleasure to meet you. And yeah, it's amazing to be able to connect and see in person to person and speak. Yeah, the reason I'm running is the status quo is not working. The capitalist system is not working, and it's been a brutal since the COVID, the way things are going, and I'm not okay. And I was one of the tenant who received an eviction middle of the pandemic, and I fought against that. I formed a tenant organization. I won that victory, and now we have a community here in my building. So there's a lot of leadership work that I initiated during the pandemic, and throughout the pandemic, we formed alliances and networks. And now we realize there's a huge need for political challenge. The current status quo leaders are not doing their part. So we people from the grassroots community have to take the leadership. And that's why I was endorsed by Municipal Socialist Alliance to run for mayor. It's me personally that I was trying to personally I was part of the team trying to find the best candidate in the current system to endorse our platform, but we couldn't find any. And we produced our platform. Nobody wanted to run with it. Why? Because anti-capitalist. Our platform is based on anti-capitalist and based on addressing the needs of Torontonians, and not tomorrow, today. And there's no false promises. They are real, achievable goals that we have. And unfortunately, nobody came forward. And Municipal Socialist Alliance looked at me. Maybe you should take on it. And you know, communication isn't my strength, and language isn't my strength. But my community is in my heart, and I know my team will not let me down. So I decided to take on this challenge and take our
Glad you
platform
did.
forward. Yeah.
I'm so glad you did because there's been a lot of talk that I can relate to about how taking a look at the list of the more well-known candidates, it's hard to find a reason to really want to get out there and vote. I mean, like there's at a certain point you realize, well, this person might be the left candidate, but I'm just going to get a lot of the same thing. And that relates to what you're saying. Like the capitalist system isn't working unless you have a candidate who's actually going to buck that system. Why am I going to, take time off in my day and do this unless I'm actually going to help build some change?
It's
So
really, indeed, Anna, and you're not the only one to share that. A lot of the people, Torontonians, we talk to in the grassroots level, feel the same way. They just given up. And it really shows in our statistics. Less than one third of the people actually go out and vote in the municipal election. Whereas in federal elections, in the provincial ones, we see much higher percentage, almost close to more than two-thirds of the people actually vote. So that goes to show that is why from the beginning, get go, we don't have democracy. We are, these are elected dictatorship. That's what's happening in the city hall, and that's what was happening for the past 20 to 30 years. I mean, I guess over 20 years, specifically.
like a housing plan. I really want to get down to the nuts
Sure.
and
Yeah,
your platform. Tell me about it because it's not what I'm seeing elsewhere. Tell us
absolutely.
about housing.
Yeah, definitely, Anna. That's a really good question here. The housing, we looked at the stats. Right now, anybody who applying for here to income housing, they had to wait 10 years to get housing. And we see the stats. Anybody who lives on the street wait to get the housing don't live beyond 42 years old. That's according to the Toronto Toronto um, research group that they put together a report on in the Toronto City website. And yeah, so we see there's a serious problem here. We are last year alone, 187 people died in the streets of Toronto, and this mainstream media do not cover those details. Why? And year after year, we have people dying on the streets over three digits, and uh, by participating in this capitalist system, we are complicit. We are in complicit to these lives, to death of these lives, and it's not okay. We cannot be living in a in a developed country like this, and look other way. So our housing program is put together by the grassroots group, and our program is actually uh, based on a lot of the research already done. So our immediate solution is, for example, right now we see that almost 15% of the housing units are not in the market. They are vacant and they're sitting empty. And we are saying
Public
that
housing?
not the public housing. I mean
Okay.
the housing in general.
Right,
They
right, right.
they're supposed to be in the market, but
Because
they're
it's
not in the market.
vacant condos,
Yeah.
investment properties.
Exactly. So they are considered as investment properties, or they are waiting for tenant to take on a higher rent and get to the units. But either way, by holding these hoarding by hoarding this capitalist system based on hoarding principles, anyways. So housing is one of the is viewed as a profit making commodity. So they're hoarding it. The 15% of the units that should be in the housing is not. So what happened in result is people have less housing and more people need housing. There's a fight, and that's why this market is exponentially growing, whereas our wages don't even match up to reality of living here in the city. So expropriate vacant space, I mean seize the vacant spaces, and that is our immediate solution. And obviously we're approaching this from multi-dimensional point of view. So we cannot just say expropriate or seize the vacant spaces and call it a
Now, does
day.
that mean it's public property? Like you seize these vacant spaces? Like right now, there's a campaign
Yes.
for 230 Sherburne,
Yes.
expropriate and turn it into social housing, running right up against, challenging the condo developer, King State Capital. Is this the kind of
Yep.
thing you're talking about? Seize
Ab-
it and make it social?
exactly. And if the developers cannot provide housing, city will, because city have the responsibility to provide the basic needs for the people. And again, housing is not a profit-making commodity, but that's how the capitalist system views it. So again, seizing the vacant spaces is one of the priorities, immediate priorities. Second, expropriate giant landlords. Right now, what's happening in the city don't have enough money to provide housing. They're saying it, but city, we live in one of the wealthiest cities in the world. So where the money is going flowing out of the country. Why? The people who own these big units, these corporate landlords, they don't even live in the city. They don't spend the money in the city. They are taking the resources from the city and taking it outside. That's how they don't even live with us. And most of these big corporate landlords don't even live with us. For an example, in my building, during the eviction, I was fighting against my landlord. I could not trace where my landlord is. Even landlord tenant board could not find out where they are, and they're saying, "Look,
Maybe the landlord does, live in the city, but it's not a local entity because these corporations supersede all national boundaries. They're multinational. That they're above all of that. Yeah.
that's
Wow.
right,
You couldn't even find out where they existed, where they
where
lived.
they are." Yeah, because I
Right.
wanted to bring the landlord to the landlord tenant board and answer my questions, because I'm at that time I was one of the workers who lost their job. And it I really so but there's many thousands of people who lost their job in Ontario who faced evictions, and I was one of them. And I had real questions to ask. Why are you not obeying the Residential Tenant Act, which is the the agreement for landlords and tenants that are enforced by the law, enforced by the provincial laws? And why are you not complying with it? So again, uh, not to deviate from the original question that you asked, these are the background reasons, for some of the work that we put
So build
together.
social housing. I'm hearing
Yeah,
that that's
build,
part of the
yes,
platform.
build social
Yeah.
housing. I mean, yes, expropriate giant landlords and take that should be managed by the city. And these housing is not a profit making commodity. It's a service that need basic needs. So that should be controlled by the city. And number three, build mass social housing. What the problem right now we're seeing is that city outsourcing these these big developers and that the real estate companies to build housing, but they're not building because they're building they're making profit for shareholders. They're not building housing to provide the needs for the people. So that's why city must build social housing, mass social housing, to solve the housing crisis. And again, there's a lot of the research is already done that we are utilizing them. Just for an example, Finland is en route to end homelessness by 2027, and that is going to be one of the first countries to eliminate homelessness. So
because you and I spoke, and you reminded me of this model where it was very high percentage of people living in social housing. Were you talking about Finland? Is that because there's precedent for something like 30% or more of a population living in well-funded, comfortable social housing, where the concept of housing being a commodity just doesn't exist. Like it's a necessity. It's not something that you trade or treat like the stock market to hide or hide your money in.
Yeah, because again, it could be one of the topics that we discussed earlier, which because this is something that we talked to a lot of folks. I couldn't recall. But it's Finland, it has a very successful model, and they're showing a way forward, and we could do it, and within the city budget right now. So that is our solution to housing crisis.
And it's interesting because I remember an argument debate with an NDP candidate talking about housing prices, and it's funny because I just heard every single solution, except the most obvious one. And it just feels to me, it's always tinkering. We can have rent controls, but that doesn't stop inflation. And how, and how do you enforce it, right? And everything other than just the most basic fundamental thing of having the social housing. And of course, the reason that became apparent to me is that, once you bring in massive development of social housing prices go down. Your property values go down, and so they should. It means that ordinary people can actually afford to buy a house. You put more stock in the market, and so it kind of explains to me why you always want to keep a little bit hoarded away, because it keeps that demand up. And of course, maybe we could do it with our budget, but what does that do to the actual property values? And right now, pension funds. Well, anyone with money doesn't know where to put it. They want to put it in the housing market. It's like it's become the place to hide your money. Right?
Absolutely, and it's very unfortunate. And city owns the land, so city has the authority to act on it. And it's the capitalist system views it as a profit-making commodity. And in our program, we see that housing as a basic need, and we remove the incentive to profit from it. So, what happens is that then people have place to live, place to call home. And I will also
defending the police as well as a way. And actually, you and I met at our Scarborough Town Center event. Fund our communities, defund the police, and I was so happy to meet someone doing the kind of organizing you were doing out in Scarborough, and that's still part of your platform.
Yes, and going to the crime aspect, it's again, we are socialists, so we see through a different lens. We see poverty and homelessness are social problems, are not police problems. And unfortunately, city sees everything through the lens of capitalist system, which is policing is the way out of povertiness, and that's the way they see it. They think they can do it, and obviously we know that's not going to work, because we look out past our borders. United States is one of the biggest failing states. It's a military budget. For their military and the policing are failing the people,
right.
and we don't want to repeat those failures in Toronto. And Toronto has the better route to go, and there are other better European cities that Toronto can follow. that actually solves crisis and solve
We like put the
crime.
money into public infrastructure. Is that kind of like, if I'm trying to understand
Yeah.
a socialist model, that would, if I'm getting the concept properly, right? Like you have so much social infrastructure, things are organized, people have a place to live, people have a place to get their needs met if they're dealing with mental health problems or with addiction problems or whatever it is that results in the kind of behavior that can get a person arrested. These needs are met. Is that
Exactly. When people have the basic needs met, that's when they go for for example, Haslow's the hierarchy needs model. If you were to look
right?
at it, when people have the basic needs met, they achieve higher. But the capitalists think the other way around, and they think, policing is the answer. And they put all the resources toward policing. We have right now our policing budget passed of more than 1 billion. And even in the last term, and the last time in 2023, we were advocating to defund the police. But what happened? The status quo administration went up by 50 million. They jumped up the police budget by 50 million, while our housing and the transit is bleeding. And again, we'll go to the transit section in a while, but stick onto the policing side, it's economically very, very uh, it's very stupid to put all the funds toward policing and then expect the crimes to go down. It's not going. That's not the way it works. Crime is a social problem, and we socialists see that it can be addressed through socialist policies such as funding extracurricular activities in schools and adequately funding programs in schools, and that keeps youth away from streets.
Yeah.
And that's a beginning stages, but then afterwards we see
I wonder
yeah,
if I can add on to that.
yeah,
As a parent, I mean, realizing like the incredible benefit of like, if there's someone who can pick my child up, because I'm a single parent, right? Someone who can pick up my child from school and get them to a swimming lesson or something like that. Now, if you have money, you don't even have to worry about that stuff. But if you don't, how's your kid getting home, and what's happening on the way home, and while you're working two jobs, like just like it strikes me because the act of caring for a child has been so like in many ways it's pink collar, and it's seen as invisible, and I see the same things in our school, like the lack of support, for the actual caring of children, not having enough staff at school to properly support them, and then bringing in the police when things get out of control, and at the same time not having enough support for parents, and then of course the police taking the children, teenagers or whoever into custody when things get out of control, and never putting that support
it's
in the first place. Sorry to go on like that. It's just
it's
as a parent,
devastating.
to see it so clearly, right?
Indeed, and this is common sense. And why are we not putting it in policy? It doesn't. Our cities' policies don't speak that. They don't speak the value of Torontonians. They don't speak to the needs of Torontonians. And they're elected with minority votes, and they control full budget. This is complete nonsense, and we cannot wait as Torontonians. We cannot wait to be dictated away with our tax dollars and to put us in prisons. This is not the way to run a city. And yeah,
We're kind of closing in on our time right now, and I
good.
wanted to address what I think is really the guts of the campaign, the way the way I relate, and why I'm very glad to see a socialist campaign. Because I hear people often say, well, but how are you going to do it? I mean, once they get elected, how are you going to actually enforce all of this? Like if you can't even get the landlord to come to a meeting and you don't know what planet he lives on, and how are you actually going to force them to do anything? And to me, this gets to the real guts of why you run. Like it's not just about getting elected, right? Like you're mobilizing a base, right? And so talk about building that critical mass of that socialist base to actually make these changes happen and force them to happen. Because that's what I find so inspiring about socialist movement. And
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's definitely, that's a really good point. It's like building the united front is essential. The problem we see is, even whether it's on the right or whether it's the left, we see that very hyper focused, one single issue motivated movements. They don't achieve, realistically, they don't achieve anything. Look what happened to the Black Lives Matter. They were hijacked by liberals, and today they pretty much advocate for liberals in Canada. In United States, they advocate for Democratic Party. And again, the movement has lost its vision, lost its purpose, and the crime against minority and the black people in states continue till today. So these are, in order to effect change, we must have a united front. Whether socially, economically, and politically, we need to have all fronts connected to make these changes happen. And I'm glad to be part of this socialist movement, to build leadership, to build initiative, to have a framework so people can see and realize, oh, there's ways we can do it. And if Kiri can do it, anybody can do it. So I think that's the kind of mindset that we are giving the power back to the people. It is our city, and we can make decisions, and we can choose the right people to represent, and we can choose the right policies to govern our city. And this is how we are going to be doing it.
So I'm just because the Black Lives Matter movement, was just, I think, so critical and transformative. And so what I hear you saying, I think, is that, like, actually anchoring that principle of abolition, police abolition, prison abolition into a socialist program
Yes.
is what actually like, you can't actually get rid of the prison industrial complex unless you seize the economy. You have to actually transform the economy. Am I?
Exactly.
Yeah,
And
it's part
that
of
is
that.
the core. It's from capitalist economy to socialist economy, and it involves a lot of education process, a lot of advocacy process. And like, I don't mean to downplay the advocacy agencies. A lot of they're doing good work, but obviously they are not political organizations. The beauty is Municipal Socialist Alliance is a political organization. It has a political front to it. Although we also advocate for, like, a lot of the tenant organizations we work with. One of them is Scarborough Tenants Union that I'm part of. So again, these are all groups that we build through this united front to bring the change that we want to see. So again, because we are so this alliance is so based on the community, based on the people who live in the city. I think we have the power to speak for the people. I think, again, one of the principles we are saying is that there should be no strong mayor powers. It should be participatory budget process. What that means is people have say on where the money should go, where the most of the money should go. At the end of the day, that is democracy. But right
Yeah.
now, it's complete dictatorship. And there's some candidates saying, oh, if I become a mayor, I will use a strong mayor to do this. Again, people can see through it.
Right.
We see in history. Those who studied history, seen the examples. So
One question that's
yeah.
coming to me, because just like around abolition and defunding the police, do you see that as a way to actually talk about private property, like the police actually as like a symbol of, like, the private property that actually needs to be socialized? Like,
It is, again, I can clarify that too on the socialist. I mean, so we socialist, we don't say, oh, for an example, we are not saying, if you have a resident that you live in a house, for an example, if you live in a house, that is your personal property. That has you don't have to worry about city taking over that. No, city will not do that, because you need a place to live too, right?
Mhm.
That's not the way that socialists view it. But unfortunately, there's a misperception saying, on the other part of the products, especially on the right side of the spectrum. Oh, socialists are, we're not going to have private property. Oh no, that's not the way it works. So
You're talking about expropriating big landlords,
big
like
landlord,
not someone who's renting out their basement so that they can afford their home.
exactly.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
that is the false understanding.
But
And
the thing to me, like, like, defunding the police always was just really seized me as an important campaign, because it's the immediate experience. Like it identifies the contact point between most people and the brutality of capitalism, because it's so much about protecting private property, and not meaning that, that people shouldn't, in the immediate sense, be able to keep their own home. But I mean, like, getting in trouble when you do those little things that that you would never be criminalized for if you had money, and yeah.
Indeed, it's that really heart-wrenching to see a lot of our youth become impacted by this criminal system for very things. And what I'm seeing is, like, based on our homework, I mean our research that we put together, it's like police do police work less than 5% of the time. So I mean, actual work is 5% of the time, and we categorize it between less than 10% of the time. Police actually do police work. So that 90% of the resources are totally waste of our tax dollars. And we in the beginning we are saying 50% defund the police, 50% because that is doable today. But eventually we see, we reduce the police to simply address the policing issues, not these petty issues that gets our youth in youth a criminal record, which they don't have a career opportunity afterwards, and takes away the future of our future generation. And one point that I really wanted to take away is that we are raising our future doctors, lawyers, and future Canadians in poverty, and we should be outraged. As an adult, we should be outraged, and that shouldn't be that way. It shouldn't be that way. We all have the potential and the resources to do better, and politically we can all stand together and on this and then make this happen. It's a humanity issue. It's not okay.
One other thing I want to touch on is transit. Like so I taught in Scarborough for many years, and when we did some organizing out there around education, people couldn't get away from talking about how the lack of transit impedes their day-to-day lives out in just not being able to get around. And I'm just wondering if you can talk about the impact of cuts to transit on the quality of life, and how with enough people and with a mobilized socialist base you would change that.
Oh, that's right. And first, when we talk about transit, we cannot ignore climate crisis. Climate emergency is together with the so when we put our socialist program together, we embraced climate emergency, and that is our policy. And transit is part of the solution that we are accomplishing it. So right now, the capitalist system encourages personal vehicles, which increases traffic. People are on the highways, on the roads, waiting to go home for hours and hours. But if you were to look at it in Paris, for an example, they have much reliable transit system that was built, many years ago. And the people are able to go to work and come back in less than 30 minutes. But in Toronto, it's only getting worse. Why? I mean, we have 3 million people now. It needs to be we need to be able to move the people, and also protect the climate. So that's why we put together a policy that says free transit for everybody. Anyone in the city, free transit, and that is easily accessible. And we don't even have to increase tax for that, because our existing fund is good enough to do that. And we also advocate for increasing taxes on the big properties of big business. Yes, we do advocate that, because we want to take away the onus on the small businesses and put it on the big businesses, because small businesses are heart and soul of our community. So, and they carry a lot of the burden, and workers and small businesses pay more taxes than big businesses. They have tax breaks, and they don't even invest in our communities. So they need to be taxed heavily to fund these services. So so transit, it should be free, and it is a necessity. How else students will go to work? Go to school, and how else workers will get to work? And not only that, inequality. We cannot ignore inequality. Inequality after the inflation it's going off the roof. and we cannot manage it. How are we going to do it? One way to give back to the people and students is to make transit free for them, instead of criminalizing them, instead of threatening with $475 ticket. And imagine this, how insane it is. If you miss a parking pay, if you don't pay parking, it's $35 or $30. But if you forgot to pay a fare, or if you don't have a fare, the penalty is $475. Whoever come up with that? I don't know. I don't know why this capitalist system cannot get away from this punishment mentality. How can poor people who don't have money can pay that fine? What is it trying to achieve? This
Right.
system is a complete failure from the bottom up, and that's why it need to be cleaned up. It need to be eliminated from our policy and the program, and we need to have real democracy. We cannot have democracy without economic democracy. So those are issues: the transit, climate, and till today we are talking about climate crisis. Since industrial revolution, the climate crisis is real, and the lot of agencies were doing a lot of work, and they've been ignored by these fossil fuel agencies, who have duped fake researchers to challenge, to discredit the actual work that are done by our scientists. And that is disheartening. And today, we are talking about paper straws to protect the environment. That's nonsense. We have this for example, Bill Gates, he's traveling on jets and to talk about paper straws. And this is really insane, that how these capitalism these this capitalism utilize these elites to dictate the economy and the policies from everywhere. And that's why the transit not only address the needs of people, inequality issues, but also climate crisis. So making public transit free will encourage people to leave their vehicle behind and get on the bus. Oh, you know what? I'm going to go to my work quicker if I take bus. So
Right.
that is going to happen. Instead of telling the drivers, oh, you need to take public transit, you need to get off the cars. Otherwise, again, putting the onus back on people without providing a
Mhm.
real choice, it's
Right.
very bad politics. And
Yeah.
on that point, I will also stretch that right now, our insurance is very high. Why? Because our city allows people, our Torontonians, to be exploited by insurance companies, and that's not okay. It shouldn't be happening like that. In this more advanced city, there's ways we can challenge this capitalist crisis, and that's why the socialist solutions are there for everybody to see, and is real, and it's doable today. That's a
All
beauty.
right.
Yeah.
So the way I see it is we need to mobilize that base, right, to actually make all these things happen. We need our socialist candidate in office, and we need a mobilized socialist base making it happen on the ground. How do people get in touch with you?
Oh, yes. We have my campaign website is kiri-vadivelu.ca. It
I'll
should
put it in
also
the
be
comments.
uh,
I'll make sure all that
okay,
information
fantastic.
when we post
And
it.
all my social media handles are public, so anybody can find me, connect me personally if they need to. But all the information is public. And our policy, our priorities, it should be under priorities. Our socialist program. It's about 15 pages, not too long. And the
Right.
beauty is we have the most comprehensive program compared to the 102 candidates who are running.
Yeah.
And it's it's a no-brainer for anybody who reads our policies.
Well,
Um,
we're gonna be putting all that in there and
Fantastic.
handing the flyers, and this will be a long run. Like it's not just a one-off. We're gonna this is about
E-
continuing to build this base, and
Absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely. And you could see there's many socialist leaders. They're going to just come, they're going to come behind me. And this is again, I'm just an example to show leadership, but the real leaders are behind me. So I
well,
think,
I'm
yeah.
excited about this campaign, and thank you so much for doing this interview, Kiri, and we'll be in touch.
Oh, awesome. Thanks. And a pleasure to talk to you.
Okay.
And yes, if there's anything, we'll be happy to chat and, explain more in details of the policies.
Sounds great. Take care.
Take care.